Hello, folks. Welcome to the show. Today we're doing it a little bit different. I am just going to rant about the protests this weekend. And actually, I don't really care about the protests. It's your right to do it. More here to rant about the protesters. And we'll try and dig deeply into a topic here that I think might actually become a format for the channel. The real question with those people is what happens the day after? Say you win tomorrow. What do you do the following day? This question seems to me to be the most important question a revolutionary could be asking themselves. What happens if we win? You're like over here complaining. You should probably have some type of solution on the other side of that complaint. Otherwise, nobody wants to hear it. And I know I'm kind of being an autist and a stickler and a nerd about having like an answer for such a trivial question. But what you have to understand is that in the 20th century, 100 million people-ish, give or take, died of starvation. That's not in World War I or in World War II. That's not from bullets or bombs. That's because when communists would take over a country, they would redistribute the land and the farming and everything. The farming would fall apart and everyone would die. Prime example is known as the Holodomor. Fun fact, that involved Russia and Ukraine. And actually, Lenin wrote a book, I'm pretty sure something called The Day After. Zizek talks about it. The day after the revolution, what do we do? It's very important. So that question triggered people all weekend long, and that is really what I want to talk about here, is the actual reaction that I got out of humans when I asked them something as simple as, what do you think you would do as a solution? It's actually odd how doing this channel a little bit has turned into some like thought experiments. And so it started out with, I was just going to do this about that question. And then like thinking about it, I actually figured out that like, what do we do the day after is a pretty deep question. What do you do the day after a breakup? What do you do the day after you get fired? What do you do the day after you find out you have cancer? So I think we'll actually be addressing those quite a bit on this channel. That might be how I'll try and approach my philosophic ideas. All right, to the main topic, the protestors, not protesting. Just want to make sure everybody knows that I think protesting is actually probably an awesome thing to do if you have a plan. Couple of funny little definitions for you. So what we're looking at here are champagne socialists. A champagne socialist is someone who espouses socialist progressive political views, such as wealth distribution or equality, while living a wealthy, luxurious lifestyle that contradicts those values. The term is often used critically to point out the hypocrisy of performative activism. As I pointed out in a meme in a prior episode, the altruism is merely performative. Somewhere in there I dropped the Nietzsche quote, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you." So anyway, I go sit down at the bar, mostly mind my business, order a beer, and all of a sudden, person sitting next to me happens to be a gal who I had sat next to at a establishment eating lunch at before when I was skiing one day. And she was cordial, and she actually remembered what we had discussed and was talking about it. And then pretty much almost immediately flipped into, "Oh, were you at the protest today?" And I said no. And she said why. And I said, well, because I don't think that you people really have very much of a plan, or at least not that I've seen. And she talked a bit, and then I said, well, okay, so like, what is your plan, like the day after you win? And she said, well, we'll just figure that out then. And that was when I pointed out that 100 million people died because the communists lacked a plan every time they take over. And she proceeded to yell and tell me that I was projecting. I don't know where that came from. I wasn't yelling at all. And all I did was ask her what her plan was and pointed out that not having a plan was dangerous. And then she started to call me ignorant and said that Kamala Harris had a great plan and that I just didn't know about it. In short, when I looked it up, it was pretty easy for me to not have to think very hard to understand that it was just a bunch of fluff. So the down payment assistance would have kept housing high. It would have kept the bubble inflated essentially on that. Wouldn't have, and taxpayers would have been the ones that footed the bill for the relief. And then when it all fell apart and people couldn't pay those mortgages, like Fannie and Freddie and the '08 and everything else, then it would have all fallen apart. So, no. Healthcare, Democrats talking about fixing healthcare. It was the ACA that actually doubled and tripled the cost of healthcare for the people actually paying for healthcare in most states. Problem. Child tax credits. That's like they were going to increase child tax credits. That would have just been a redistribution plan. Again, the people would have paid for that actually go earn the income, right? So, issue there. Increasing minimum wage was something that they talked about. You could talk about it. You should have been about it for the last, I don't know, however many years we haven't increased minimum wage. It's still like $7. I don't think anywhere is actually paying $7 for a wage except for like maybe like a restaurant or something. Education. How much money have we dumped into education? Donald Trump and Elon Musk are probably on the right track, removing the Department of Education and working to something that worked and was providing us value to our dollar was actually probably a much better idea. So while I'm sitting there in silence, trying to finish my beer, looking at this information about what exactly the Democrat plan was that I was so ignorant about, relieving myself of my ignorance, I hear this girl sitting next to me. Number one, in that time, she probably had 3 drinks. Let's just be generous and say I miscounted and she only had 2. But like those mixed drinks are probably 2.5 shots each. So they're, call it 2 drinks each. So that's 4 drinks in the time it took me to have like a beer or 2, whatever it was. That might have been a second beer or something like that. But, so but I think this person probably had more like 6 total, whatever shots or you would call it with those drinks. So I listened to this person lamenting that they're 36 and dateless. They can't find someone that will fuck them right. Their daddy's a banker. They're on their way to a $3,000 yoga retreat. She invited her friend because she's going on the yoga retreat alone, but her friend was like, I can't imagine spending $3,000 on a yoga retreat. She wants to have kids, but she's 36, so she can't find someone. So all of this was at the George Floyd riots in Denver, but as soon as it got too dark and heavy, I got on my scooter and went home. This is like word for word stuff that I heard sitting next to me while I was there. Oh, that and want to assassinate Donald Trump. That and something about burn it all down. It was ridiculous. This is a human being that exists and they're privileged. The champagne socialists. And I don't remember where the axiom came from, but whoever talks loudest is the one who loses. Doesn't really work that way anymore. People can basically act with indignity, like they were treated poorly, they were misgendered, whatever it was, and all of a sudden it's a reason to go hold up a sign and be one of the people. What I've kind of found most crazy was like the openly talking about assassinating Trump and, burning stuff down. I've seen that from the town fool where they were talking about a new development here, and the response to, oh, how do we fix it? What do you want to do? Was burn it down. And they won't be lining back up to rebuild it. It's really all you need to know. If you enjoyed any of this, please like, share, subscribe if you stuck around.